Welcome back to the Ride and Laugh podcast. If you love mountain biking, you are in the right place. Close your eyes, picture your last really fun group ride. Ride's over, you're back at the lot, you're talking bikes, progression, tech, stoke. You love bikes, we love bikes. Let's drop in. Sage, how are you?
Oh, Danny, I'm doing so well, man. It's been a really interesting week, but a fun week. How are you doing?
I am doing well. I am putting into action everything that we've been talking about. Everything that we've been talking about this whole summer, about staying present, reaching for gratitude, finding things to appreciate in everyday life and in our mountain biking world and community. I am putting that into action, and everything that I've learned up until this point has really come into handy.
Yes.
And gratitude, and I get to help my family, and I get to do things to be the best father and husband I can be, and that gives me so much warmth. So from the outside, it may not look like everything is going swimmingly well. I'm going with it, man. Like everything is cool. And here we are talking bikes. So everyone tuning in, you get to talk bikes for an hour. And Sage, this is one of the favorite. We talk bikes all week, but this is this one's being recorded, and one of my favorite hours because we are just going to be talking bikes. So yeah, let's get into it, man.
Yeah, how about Rampage and the first ever girls entry? And I just want to say congratulations to Robin Gooms, who got first place, and even though she got last place, Chelsea Kimbrell. And I gotta tell you, I found her run very interesting. She ended up crashing twice on the same section, but what I loved was they had her mic on and you could hear her self-talk the whole time. And I just love that. It was so awesome, man. Did you get a chance to catch that?
I did. I watched Red Bull Rampage. I watched the women's with my girls, and you had told me how cool it was. And it was amazing that women are riding at this level. Just getting off of that mountain, I mean, is a feat and should be rewarded with hundreds of thousands of dollars. So all the women rode amazing. And yeah, the winner did 2 backflips right out of the gate and pretty much won the whole thing right there. But what was so intriguing to you about the last place, about Chelsea?
You know, I was going to ask you if you were having PTSD watching her fall off that cliff.
Oh, Chelsea's my girl. I mean, I was just like, yeah, I know the feeling. I think I really do. I think that she did the same thing that I did at Natalie.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about the consequences.
Yeah.
And when I was talking about the Natalie, like that consequences were enormous because we're talking about, if you haven't listened to the episode, we're talking about my mind freezing up and falling off of a big slab. I never even got to the slab. I did the entry and then I fell off. And we're talking about the consequences, and like, you just can't do it. Like, you have to be 100% in, and you can't, the muscle memory, everything needs to be right. We did a whole episode on it, which I've listened to numerous times and have even more feedback. It's so great to be able to tap into intuition and know when we're ready to send something. So that's know when to send it, know when to ride away. That's episode number 35, which we're also going to get into the listener comments on. But when I saw Chelsea's first run, she clearly missed the line. And then on the second run, she had the line and she bailed anyway. It was the fear was in her head. The fear, something in her squeezed the brake levers, and both times she was okay. I mean, which is
thank God.
So that's where I was going. Like, yeah, the consequence at Natalie, I was like saying was so huge, and it was. So in that episode number 35, you and I were talking about, it's also, if you're going to go for it, it's also understanding the consequence. So Red Bull Rampage, it doesn't really get more consequential in mountain biking or like in really any sport. I mean, it is the most consequential thing in the world. So here I am, like talking about that on Natalie, which looks small, tiny compared to Red Bull Rampage. This is the gnarliest mountain biking in the world. And it was just really, really interesting to see that second run. I was like, oh, she's got it. She's got the line. And then she totally squeezed the brakes. And I don't want to speak for her. Obviously we'll have her on as a guest. She's going to hear this. So I'm sure she'll want to come on and talk to us. But I would love to talk to her, because the things she was saying during her ride, I got this. And, she was talking about each feature as she approached it. It was really awesome. And I knew she had already done that run in warm-ups. and then she panicked, and I could just wholly relate to that. Her brain just turned that off and was like, I'm not doing it, which was way more dangerous than just trusting the skills and doing it. Was that your impression as well?
Yeah. I looked at those features at Rampage, and it was like, to me, the Natalie feature that you were on was just as dangerous. The difference is the Rampage course is about 100 Natalies. It's like that, and then keep doing that over and over, plus throwing some massive gaps, So
yeah,
it's just an endless. And where I'm going with this is the amount of focus and concentration that those ladies and gentlemen have is just tremendous. And to be able to remember all the little intricacies. And then on the day of the race, they were saying how loose and dry the course was. So even though their practice runs felt one way, they had to quickly adjust because the terrain and the conditions were completely different race day. It was just mind blowing, the stuff that they were doing.
Oh yeah. And some of what was really blowing me away was, obviously everything, but some of these landings, they would send this massive gap or this massive jump or drop and just have an enormous amount of speed. And then the landing would be like really, really narrow and then turn right away. And on the other side is nothing, and then into the next feature. But it was just like, oh my gosh, like if you don't make that, and you did, we've all seen videos of people falling off of that. If you haven't, don't, but it's crazy. It's, when you watch the warm-ups and the practices and all the clips that are coming out, if you're subscribed to Red Bull TV, I'm just getting like Rampage clips all week, which, are 90% awesome and 10% horrible, when someone crashes and falls off of one of those cliffs.
Yeah. How do you actually feel about, I haven't watched Rampage in so long.
Me either.
And I only watched it this year because of the women, but I actually stopped watching Rampage. And there's a couple reasons. And one of them is it just seems so crazy to me. I find it unrelatable. But two, in the last couple years, it's kind of become more of a slope style event. And what I loved about the original Rampages was how raw it was. It was about picking the right lines and these really raw lines. Very, very little man-made features. And now every year it just becomes more man-made. And I guess the big controversy, I don't know if you watched all of the men's, but Brandon Semenuk won. And if you know anything about Brandon Semenuk, this dude is muy talented. This guy is just all about slope style.
We're bilingual.
He's not, by the way.
Well, he speaks Canadian also.
Hey.
That's all we know. Tim Hortons and A.
Yeah.
We'll learn more when we go to Squamish.
Right.
Or Whistler. Or Whistler. Yeah.
Yeah. So Semenuk put down this amazing line, and he did a bunch of tricks. He did some backflips, whips, front flips, all these things. And it was very, very cool. And he got first place. And the one that I liked the most was Brendan Fairclough. I might be saying his name wrong, but he had this really traditionally awesome, old school line. And he got like 11th place. And it really bothered me. It got under my skin because to me, his line was more difficult, and it was actually more in the spirit of what Rampage is all about. And I don't know. It was kind of, I was really happy for Brendan, and he's really talented. This is nothing against Brendan Semenuk. Like he is, I wish I had his skills, but if I want to watch slopestyle, I'm going to watch Crankworks. I want to watch Rampage for the raw trails.
Well, being able to do the tricks off of that terrain. With those consequences, slope style are obviously purely man-made courses, and they're all very smooth, and it's a different bike. Right? So you're not using a downhill bike. You're not using these big giant bikes that they have to use at Rampage because the landing forces are just so enormous. So it's I guess it's kind of, and maybe the judges are saying, look, this is how we're rating this, is which tricks you're doing. But I agree with you. I agree. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Rampage should be its own special thing. I don't know that it should be a trick centric, judging format. Yeah. I love the big jumps and the big drops and the raw lines. it's just that they've gotten so good at that stuff that now it's just like kind of ho hum to the judges, not to me watching at home. Who was it? Was it Semenuk that there's a big, huge boulder and he built an on-off onto it?
No, that was Brendan Fairclough. That was the run. That's the run.
Well, that was my favorite part of the whole thing.
Yes, he got 11th.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that on-off on that boulder was my favorite thing in the world. I mean, I saw that a little clip on YouTube and I watched it like 20 times. Like, first, the boulder is just enormous. And he nails the speed. Like, there's no room for error whatsoever getting onto this thing. He nails it perfectly. I mean, he just like gently lands on this thing like a magic carpet, and then sends it off of it, which is another just like, it's not that big. So like right away he's jumping off of it, and it's a huge drop. It was such a cool line, and it takes so much skill, so much commitment. So yeah, I think I'm in your camp. I don't want to knock any of these riders, and Brandon Semenuk is awesome. He's won 4 of them. I watched his run. I mean, it was jaw-dropping. Yeah. But that's an interesting take. So would you watch again next year? Did this bring you back in?
I would watch the women. I probably would not watch the men unless they started changing the format to be more when they start giving more credit to people that are being more creative. And I don't mean creative trick-wise. I mean creative line-wise. I'm again, the whole course seems very man-made now. If you go back to like, I forget when Rampage started, but I almost say it was like 2010 or something like that. You go back to those first years, it was so raw, and the riders were all picking different lines, making their own lines, and just there were still some man-made features, of course. They always had that, big canyon, send off, the big gap jump, and there's always some crazy drops. But this year, it just seems like everything is so manicured, and to an extent, right? I mean, it's still loose and it's still dangerous. The consequence is still there. I'm not saying that that's not there. I'm just saying that it lost a little bit of its, specialness to me, of what made Rampage so unique.
For me, when they start doing all the tricks, it becomes less mountain biking.
Yeah, slope style.
It feels more BMX, dirt jump, slope style. Like, I can't relate to, some of the words that they use, like a back flip, no hand, can, nook, I don't know what these things are. And, the announcers getting really excited about them and everything. And, but, I like to see, like, Rampage is mountain biking. And so to your point, like big sends, technical lines, high speeds on your mountain bike. And obviously doing a whip or a table or throwing in a backflip here and there. But the direction that it's gone is more towards the tricks and the difficulty of the tricks than the difficulty of the line. And I just don't know if these guys just got too good. They're so good. Yeah. Getting down that mountain is not that big a deal for those guys anymore. It's kind of get down the mountain with like 18 tricks.
I think that it's a little bit of social media, and it's a little bit of judging, and it's a little bit on the riders. It's 3 parts. And so what gets people interested is the whips, and it's the back flips and the front flips. That's what's in, when you see that on social media, like, whoa, as a non-biker, you could appreciate that, The Brendan Fairclough's line, Brendog's line, I mean, that doesn't look sexy unless you get it, right? Unless you're a mountain biker, you don't realize how difficult that is, and to have the creative ability to do that. But the judges are like, okay, well, that's not what people want. People want this. Yeah. So then they reward more tricks. And then what you have is more people entering that are more slope style. And so you have more people like Semenuk entering, and then that skews. So then everything starts to skew more toward a slope style type of it's not a race event, I guess, Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. Would you watch it?
I also had, I remember watching it a long time ago and then stopping. Yeah. And then I watched this year because you told me that the women's was worth watching, and I watched with my girls, and that was cool. And we started the men's, and I was enjoying it because it's just jaw-droppingly amazing to watch. And even my kids who don't know all that much about mountain biking, even though you would think that they would listen to Dad's podcast and be experts at this point, but you know, my kids are 11 and 13 and, I don't know. I'm not Bluey, so I guess it's just not that interesting. You know, it's just not interesting enough. Whoever Bluey is. They got me a Bluey shirt. So maybe if I wear the Bluey shirt on the podcast, then they can watch. So you get two more viewers, you know, in my own house. But you know, they'll watch. If I put something cool on, they'll watch it. And that Red Bull was certainly keeping their attention. You know, it was really cool. And it was really cool to see the women doing it with them as well. I don't know why I stopped watching. Maybe it just became something that was not, it just doesn't feel mountain biking enough. I think maybe I don't think I identified that, but maybe that's kind of what it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how I feel. I mean, to me, Red Bull, it was more like a downhill race. It was dual crown, crazy lines, you know, just getting creative with all the stuff. And then you had something like slopestyle, which was a completely different.
Yeah. And I enjoy watching both of those. Yeah.
Yes. Right. And then Rampage kind of like combined the two, and now it's heading more toward the slopestyle.
Slopestyle needs to have some more like high consequence canyon gaps or something. We got to spice up slope style now. It's not fair. They took Rampage. We're taking slope style. So why are you saying that you would watch the women's and not the men's? It's the same judges. What is it about the women's competition that you find more intriguing?
I really appreciate the effort that's going into it. And I'm really curious to see where the women take it. You know, they seem to be progressing very quickly now that the spotlight and the funds and, you know, the sponsorship is there. And I just love that. I love that. You know, it's like, let's get more people involved. I'm just intrigued. I tend to find the women's races more interesting anyway. They have the mindset.
Yeah. We've never really drilled down into why you feel that way.
I don't know, but I did notice that a lot of the women were doing the mindset stuff, and I could really relate to that. Because a lot of them were mic'd up, and you could hear them like talking through the whole thing, just like, you got this, stay left, you know, or blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, yeah. And the guys,
let's get some listener feedback. I should have asked earlier. YouTube comments, Ride and Laugh One at Gmail. What are your thoughts on Rampage this year? What are your thoughts on the men's? What are your thoughts on women's? Do you watch every year? Did you watch this year? And, you know, if you're not watching, what is it? Or is anything that Sage and I are saying kind of relatable? Going back to an earlier point, though, is like the women were more they weren't doing just tricks. The one that did the 2 tricks won.
Yes.
The one that did the best tricks won.
Right.
But, you know, I think there was 6 or 7 riders.
7.
There was 7, but one got. Or was there 7 that went? Okay. So the other 6, like, pretty much just made it down the mountain. And they did some whips and they threw in a little bit of style, but it wasn't about the tricks. It was like those original Rampage days.
Yes, exactly, Danny.
But the lines were still groomed. They still have 3 diggers in themselves, and they still go up there and they groom and they manicure. And I think they're all sharing lines also. So it's not quite as raw.
Yeah.
But it was more about like just kind of like getting down the mountain.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I just found that more relatable, you know, because I can't do those tail whips and back whips and all this. So for me, I would be like the ladies, just like get down the mountain, you know, and it's how can you do that? And it's scary. It's really, I mean, we're saying get down the mountain, but it's like the amount of skill you need to get down the mountain is just, it's
the early days. And look, it's different bikes now too. And the riders just have so much more practice doing this sort of thing. But the early days, it was get off this mountain. It was like get down without crashing, you know, get down without your bike, you know, tacoing a wheel or something. So it really was that, which is, it's really interesting. So Ride and Laugh One at Gmail, YouTube comments. What are your thoughts on Red Bull, on Rampage, men's and women's? Did you watch this year? Did the women intrigue you? Did you enjoy it? Something that you took out of it? Is there anything for us normal mountain bikers to get out of that? Is it just entertainment, or are you watching technique during this to try to pick something up? You know, I mean, boy, they're in the air for a long time, but the technique's the same. Look, stay centered, right?
Yeah.
Line your hips up.
Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
yeah. And full commit. So, all right. We are reviewing podcast number 35, Know When to Send It and When to Ride Away, Mountain Bike Intuition. And like I said, I just thought that was a really, really interesting conversation, and we got some excellent feedback. So at Denny Janity MTB,
Dennis.
Dennis had a really long and excellent, insightful comment. So I just pulled out a few interesting points from it, out of many, many cool things that he said. But he was talking about mountain biking and the Stoke and sharing the Stoke. And I like the phrase that he said, there's a place in the sandbox for everybody.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
And there's that child, like, we're playing, we're riding bikes, like we're riding bikes.
Yes.
We're playing, we're having fun. So he had a lot of appreciation to other riders that have helped him. He had a lot of appreciation to other content creators. I know he's talked to you, Sage, and he's mentioned things like that before. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting that he pulled out, which is something that I wanted to talk to you about in that podcast, and we never really got down to it, was the rule of 3.
Yeah.
3 tries and then you stop doing something. We never really got into your reasoning behind the rule of 3. And so Dennis wrote, rule of 3 is a great rule to live by because it's your body's way of telling you it's not ready for something if you can't get it by the 3rd try. So that's Dennis's take on that. What is your take on the rule of 3? Is that also how you approach it? That your body's telling you, or your mind's telling you, look, if I can't get this on 3 run-ups, I'm just to explain to everyone, the rule of 3 means you're going at a feature or a skinny or a drop. You're running up to it 3 times, and then if you don't get it on your 3rd time, then you're just saying, not today, I'll do it another day. So it's kind of
that's right.
It's another way to look for a sign, right?
Yeah, you're giving yourself 3 honest goes. And so the rule of 3 is really interesting. And by the way, it's not always 3 sometimes. It really is 3, but sometimes you have to get certain parts in line before I'll even count it as a go. So I know at like 38 special, you and Stick were saying I did 4 run-ups or something like that, but I don't count all of the run-ups. It has to be an honest go. And so right. I count 3 honest goes. Like, okay, that could have happened.
Okay, so that's what I want to get to. Like, you might do 6 attempts at this thing, but only count 2 of them as run-ups because you were only lined up perfectly, but you didn't go because of your head. You just weren't ready to commit.
Something.
So everything's perfect.
Yeah.
And you don't go. So everything's perfect and you don't do it again. Everything's perfect and you do it. And that's a mental thing, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes I won't even take 3. Sometimes I'll just do it in 1 or 2. Oh, yeah. But like the reason why I set the number 3 is because for me, if I'm doing a rule of 3, that usually means it's a very high consequence move. And therefore it's taking a lot of adrenaline and brain energy as well as physical, but it's very taxing on my brain. It's usually forcing me to do things that I'm not comfortable doing. And so I'm working extra hard. So when I start getting beyond 3, I start fatiguing, not just in a physical sense, but from a mental sense. And I don't ever want to get to that point where that becomes an issue. I want to do this fresh. I want to do it clean. And I know if I can get it in 3, I'm confident everything's good. When I start going beyond that, then I start pushing my limits, and it usually doesn't fare well for me. So I started doing that a long time ago, and it's been working out great for me.
Yes. I really like the way that you're explaining that. It makes a ton of sense. I don't have the rule of 3, and sometimes that's benefited me and sometimes it hasn't. Like I just go until, but I will just go until I feel like I'm not, okay, this isn't happening today. I don't feel right about it.
Yeah.
Or I will just keep going. And sometimes those keep attacking moments are wearing me out and I don't get it and I'm not going to get it. But I still feel like I can do it. And the rule of 3, I think, kind of like brings up a nice way to just be like, okay, I can feel good about this. It's going to happen, just not today.
Yeah.
And you get to ride away with a fair amount of your confidence still there because you didn't fail at it 8 times. And you get to ride away with a lot of your confidence still there because, I did 3 run-ups and it wasn't there today. But then you can start visualizing it. You start being like, okay, well, next time I'm going to know exactly what to do with this. And yeah. So like, I don't want to have a rule of 3 because I want to keep attacking things, but I think it might be good for me.
Listen, like I said, it doesn't mean you only get 3 run-ups. It just means you get 3 honest goes, So if it takes you like 8 tries to get to the edge of 38 special, the slab at Mount Penn, that's really consequential. But only like 2 of those were actual, oh man, that could have happened right there.
I could have done
okay.
it. Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's okay.
Okay. All right. I think I'm in. I think I'm in for the rule of 3. I'm gonna try to adopt that as one of my intuition markers, and something that can, because I haven't been great at listening to intuition. We did a whole episode on it, and I definitely want more technique. And I'm going to try to be more present and not be seeking approval or self-worth through mountain biking, as we talk about in that episode. So Dennis, actually, he has also a YouTuber. You can check out his channel, which is Denny Janetti, JANNETTY MTB.
Yes.
We'll put a link in the show notes. But he did a really cool video called "Progression in Mountain Biking is Not Linear: 3 Steps to Help Progress."
Yeah.
And he references the Ride and Laugh podcast. About halfway through, he talks about Sage and I and the podcast, and how that inspired him and helped him, and also had something to do with the making of that video. So check it out. I thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed it. We met Dennis at Mountain Creek on the first time that we went there this summer when it started to rain.
Yeah.
And
Andre.
we saw him on a trail, and then we got to talk to him when it was raining. One of the benefits of the thunderstorm coming through was you and Dennis really got to talk. I didn't get to talk to him too much, but seemed like a nice guy, and he's a listener, so we appreciate that. And he's a YouTuber, and so we want to support that.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis, by the way, for the shout out.
Yes, thank you, Dennis. Yes, and thanks for listening, and thanks for mentioning us on the podcast. You mention us, we'll most likely mention you.
Hey.
Quid pro quo. It's very popular these days. All right. Staying into mountain biking, and another fantastic YouTuber is at Sploosh MTB, and that's Zan's channel. And he picked up on riding with intention when you talked about riding that slick rock.
Oh yeah.
And because you were riding with intention, you were able to save yourself and not fall down on that rock. And he wrote, riding with intention is something I stand by religiously. If you're going to be a passenger and not commit, there's no need to try that feature.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was worded so well, because we haven't really talked in that language. But if you're a passenger on the bike, what did you make of that comment?
I love that. We've gotten a few comments like that where people have phrased things. You're like, oh man. And that was one of them. Like the passenger, being a passenger on the bike, basically just being passive and letting the bike do the work. It's taking you for a ride instead of you riding the bike. It's just like, Zan nailed that. And how true. We've all been there where you've just kind of let the bike take you for a ride. And, you can get away with that. You can get away with that when the trails are less consequential. But, if you want to get the most out of your ride and it starts getting technical, you got to be working that bike. And it's nowhere more true than at Mount Penn, where if you just have a lapse in judgment for a hot second, you'll end up on your rear end.
Yes. Intention. You're riding with intention. You're focused. You're present. You're in the moment. You're not thinking about that scary feature that's coming up at some other point. You're in the moment.
Yeah.
And you are picking the line, and you're moving your weight around, and you're really controlling the bike. And as Dan points out, if you're a passenger and the bike's just kind of doing its thing and you're just pedaling, it's going to be very easy for that to get away from you. So anywhere where you are, if you're not, if you can add intention to your riding, I think that's going to be a huge benefit, obviously, and more fun and safer.
Yeah. What I love about that saying is passenger. When you think about a passenger in a car, oftentimes as a passenger, you can not only you're not physically, driving the vehicle, but you're just mentally out of it too. You're just along for the ride mentally and physically. You're not doing anything. So, and I love that because it's both pieces. And I think you were just touching on that. It's both pieces.
Yes.
It's a physical component
well said.
And it's a mental component,
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Yeah. That's excellent. Excellent point to tie the analogy to bring it home. And then Shelly Georgopoulos, 675.
Yes.
Shelly, who is the leader of the fire team and one of our local shredders, and just had a hip replacement, and she is on the mend and riding again. And she wrote about that episode. Quite the epiphany from Dan regarding we are worthy whether we send a feature or not, and easy to grasp intellectually, but hard to live by. As I work my way back from prolonged break from the bike, from the surgery, I really enjoyed Dan's positivity on all episodes, but on this one, it's top shelf. So thank you, Shelly. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to be inspiring people. And Shelly's an inspirational person, getting the hip replacement and getting back on the bike.
Oh, yeah.
And also leading the fire team. I mean, her whole story of starting the fire team and leading the fire team just to get her, because her daughter and her friends wanted to race enduro, a female enduro. It's all very awesome. But it's cool hearing that epiphany kind of resonated with her, not about doing drops, but about pushing herself physically as she recovers from surgery.
Yeah. You know, Danny, I mean, talk about a gratitude. I'm so grateful that I have you as a riding partner, because you are a really positive guy, you know, and it's like there are so many times in mountain biking, and I guess in life too, but let's talk mountain biking. There's so many times in mountain biking where you can let yourself get into a hole, you know, and we talk about stacking wins. What about the opposite? When you start stacking losses, and having a riding partner that's positive and doesn't let you fall into a hole. Like, dude, it's all good. You did a great job here, or here's where we can get it next time, or whatever. You're such a positive influence. You know, it's not like, not that I've ever run into anybody that's made me feel bad for screwing up, but you have the ability to kind of pick people up as well, you know, and that's pretty awesome.
Well, I appreciate the compliment about being positive. That's one of the things I love about doing this podcast. That's one of the things I love about my life and mountain biking. And but I love, you know, spreading the positive vibe. I know you do as well. You know, that's what we're all about. And I feel like that's just fits into mountain biking so well. And we've talked about that so many times on what makes mountain bikers awesome, and what part of what makes the sport so fun is the support and the positive vibe, and being able to take that to life or from life to the bike. You know, it's so challenging. It's so challenging. Some of what we do on the bike is so scary, and to be able to overcome fear. It's one thing to overcome fear of public speaking. Like, you're not going to hurt yourself. It's just a fear of heights, right? You're not going to hurt yourself. It's just a fear, unless you're doing something dangerous, you know, but overcoming a fear of doing a big drop or a really steep technical line, like, well, now there's a real fear there. So like it brings in like a legitimate fear, a physical fear, and it brings in like overcoming those fears, and also like having the skill and the confidence and the physicality of it. It's just an amazing sport. I love it, obviously.
Oh yeah. Yep. And you could take all those things to life, like just as you were saying, you know, you could take all those things that we learn in mountain biking, you could take them right to life, you know, and trying to find a positive. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I was going to say, I write in my journal all the time, centered on the bike, centered in life. And we've said this before, flow in the bike, flow in life. For me, staying centered and being in the middle of the bike, and we've been talking about that with the slabs, and we've talked about that with jumping. When you're on the bike and you're in the right place, everything flows. And when you're in life and you're centered and you allow life to happen instead of always trying to control it, when you just say, okay, I'm going to stop overthinking this. I'm just going to let it happen and see how it goes, because anything in the future isn't here. So those are worries and fears that haven't gotten here yet. It's make believe, and the past is already done. So I'm just right here, right now. All right, what can I do here right now? And when you do that in mountain biking, you unlock everything. And then when you like, okay, well, let me just do that in life, you know, taking my kid to the dentist, and all of a sudden, oh, I get to take my kid to the dentist instead of I have to take my kid to the dentist. It just changes your perspective. It's awesome.
It's kind of interesting. As I was listening to you talk, I kind of went back to the 3-try rule, you know, and it's like, when has forcing something ever worked out? You know, anytime you force something, it's always like, thank God I got away with that. You know, it's never like a good feeling. And I think that's where that 3-try rule really saves you, because you're not forcing anything. Because maybe by the 8th try, you're like, gosh darn it, you're going to make this thing happen. And it's like, holy crap, I just got away with that in the skin of my teeth. That's not the feeling you want. You know, you want the feeling of, that was really good, you know, not like, woo.
Right. It's like, have you ever completed a scary looking feature and then someone says, do you want to go do it again and cement it in? You're like, nope, I got away with it. I feel like I got away with it. Like, I don't want to do it again. Yeah.
And that's in life too. Like when you are forcing yourself to go through something, right? Instead of just being in the moment and just going with the flow. That's what you want on the bike. That's what you want in life. And that's where that 3-try rule comes in. You know, it prevents you from going too far past that point, because at that point, you're not in flow. You are fighting flow. At that point, after 3 tries, you are fighting the flow.
Yeah. When you're up in the middle of the night thinking about what you need to do the next day or the next week, it's the middle of the night. There's nothing to be accomplished right there. Deal with it later. You'll deal with it when it gets here. Just let it go. Come back to this moment and get it and enjoy laying in bed and being comfortable and getting some good sleep. And, you know, easier said than done, which is exactly what Shelley's comment was. Like, intellectually, makes a lot of sense. But to get into action, it takes practice. And the world constantly gives us things to worry about.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's the challenge. That's the challenge is, am I going to worry about this feature? There's a drop coming up on this trail that is rocky and I always fall on. Nico's drop. I'm talking about you. And am I going to worry about that feature for the first hour and a half of my ride before I get there and not enjoy the rest of the ride, or maybe not ride well because I'm thinking about something that's coming up in the future that's going to scare me? Or am I going to stay in the moment, and when it gets here, I'll deal with it. When it gets here, I'll either ride it or I won't, and I'm going to trust my intuition to handle that. And then with life, am I going to worry about what's coming up next week? I'm going to worry about this thing that just came up, this bill that just came due, you know, this situation that just happened, this person that I have to deal with. Oh, now at work tomorrow, I'm going to have to deal with this because I saw this email. Well, no, you can deal with that when it gets here. Stay in the present moment and flow. That's how I started this podcast, is staying in the present moment and flowing. And I've been learning that on the bike.
Yeah.
And I've been learning that in life, and I'm applying it in both places. And it's just a really beautiful way to live.
To bring back the Red Bull thing, I know you didn't watch the whole men's thing. I did. There was one gentleman that was going to do a second run. So you get 2 runs. That's how Red Bull works. You get 2 tries to get down this mountain. So if your first score wasn't that great, you have an opportunity to go back up. And this gentleman, I forget what his name was, but he went back up and the winds just were not right. He had this trick planned and the winds were not right. And you could see this war going on in his brain. He really wanted to do this, and all the pressure. And I'm bringing this up because, you know, the type of pressure that these athletes feel, the men and women that do Red Bull and slopestyle, all these things, the amount of pressure that they must feel from their sponsors and their fans. You know, these guys and gals are getting paid to do this. And for him to say, I'm going to put my health first. And even though I want to do this, not just for myself, but for my fans and for my sponsors, I'm going to do the right thing. And my question to you is, although we don't experience those kinds of pressure situations, like that much pressure, we don't have sponsors yet. We don't have that many fans yet, but you know, the pressure is far less for us, but they're still there. Like it's subscribe, but the pressures are still there for you and I. What do you do to quiet all of those noises before you're going off or doing a massive jump or feature of what? How do you quiet those voices?
We've talked about your exhaling and clearing your mind, you know, and for you just say, I just cleared my mind. But for a lot of us, we need technique. And sometimes a mantra is something that in life, if you're saying, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, good things are happening, good things are going to happen. Yeah. And on the bike, if what belief system do you want? You want the belief system of, I got this. Yeah. I got this. I got this. I can do this. Keep it going. Keep them rolling. Sometimes I'll say, keep them rolling. Keep my wheels rolling. You got this. You got this. Flow. Or it's a technique. Stay low. Stay centered. It's being able to lock in is super important.
Let me take this one step further, a point that you and I had never discussed, because you're right. We do talk about a lot of the things that we do to quiet all those voices. How about physically? You know, when I'm about to do a feature, and I implore everyone to do this, if you have people around a feature watching you, And oftentimes I'll have Dan or Stick with a camera on the side of the feature, and I'll actually say, Dan, will you move to this side of the feature? Or Stick, can you join Dan on that side? Know what you're comfortable with and know how you like to operate. I know when I'm going down to do a feature, I don't like people on both sides of the feature. If it's possible, I'd like to have them off out of my eyesight, because if I see them in my peripheral, if they're in a bad spot, it will take my focus away. So know what kind of rider you are. Don't be afraid to say, hey, would you mind moving over to this side? Or can you, you're kind of in a bad spot right there. Also, I'll physically mark a trail. I'll go down and I'll actually make a mark on the trail. Like these are the points that I want to hit, or I'll mark a tree in the distance that I want to look at. So physically, I'm going to be able to quiet those voices because I know what I want to get out of my ride. So I'm kind of getting rid of all the distractions. I'm including distractions in the voices because those are the voices for me are the distractions. So if I can kind of build the success pattern of just like, these are the things that work out well for me, things that are not in my peripheral. I'm drawing lines, I'm marking things off in the distance that I'm looking at. It's going to up your success level and get all those distractions out of your brain. I don't know if you do that.
It's whatever you need to do so that you can be completely 100% locked in.
Yeah.
So that your mind isn't going and wandering like, oh, what's that person standing there? So your mind isn't thinking, what's the line here?
Yeah.
So you've marked the line. So now okay, here it is. I know exactly where the line is. It's giving that 100% confidence. So whatever tricks that is for you, or whatever that's important for you, if you know that your mind is going to latch on to someone who's in the periphery and that's going to mess you up, fix that. Or say something. I'm someone who doesn't really want someone talking to me when I'm doing something difficult. I don't want someone saying, yeah, woo, and I don't do that for other people unless I know, like Sage doesn't mind people talking to him. So I know that I can talk to him when he's in the middle of something. If you're okay with me interrupting the self-talk that you're talking to yourself, it's usually a very Sage, if anyone watches Trail Sage videos, and you should, Sage has no problem just like stream of consciousness talking to himself through like the most difficult lines. I sometimes I'm riding in front of him and he's recording and I'm like listening to what you're saying instead of riding, and it gets me all messed up. So yeah, you're incredible at that, but I don't really want someone hooting and hollering when I'm halfway done something. I'd rather it be quiet.
Yeah. Because
that throws me off my game. So yeah, I think it's individual, but there's certain things that are probably kind of universal. Like we don't really want, I don't mind people in my line of sight nearly as much. Like that doesn't really bother me, but I don't really want people yelling at me when I'm doing it. So.
You know what? It's funny because I actually had to tell Stick, like his timing of his whoop is terrible. Like he used to, and you're right. Things don't bother me, like in audio wise. You can talk to me throughout. In fact, I'd rather you talk through the whole time instead of yelling out one whoop at the wrong time, which is what Stick would do. Like right before you're about to go off a jump or right before a big move, he would go, "Get it!" And you're just like,
now. Crux move, go.
Yes. I was like, Stick, your timing is way off.
Get it. That's so funny. Yeah.
Oh, I love that guy. Yeah.
It's just enthusiasm, but it's and Ride and Laugh 1 at Gmail, YouTube comments. Absolutely. Like, what are your bugaboos? What locks you in and what knocks you out? Well, so let us know in the comments, or if you want to send us an email, rideandlaugh1 at Gmail, what helps lock you into a trail and what knocks you out? What, do you want silence? Do you want nobody standing in the way? Are you okay with the crowd? Do you want people cheering? I mean, or what other things? Sage talks about marking the trail, which I agree with. If you can sometimes just marking the entrance and just being like, okay, I know exactly where to get to.
Yeah.
And that's where those run-ups come in also, that you're like, okay, I'm going to get to here and I'm going to do this. And you could hear that on the Red Bull Rampage. You could hear that on Chelsea's run. You could hear her giving herself, okay, I did this and I'm going to do that. And bringing it back, and you're welcome to return to the subject, but bringing it back to Red Bull Rampage, and you talked about that fella skipping his second run because of the wind.
Yeah.
Chelsea on her second run, she really wanted to do it. She really wanted to complete the line. She knew she could. I don't think she thought she was going to win because she wasn't going to do backflips, but she wanted to get down because she's a competitor. I mean, she's a hardcore competitor.
Oh, she's a baller.
Yeah. So she wanted to finish that line, and maybe that would have been good enough for second place. Who knows? Maybe first place. But nonetheless, it was really windy up there, and the wind never really died down, and she decided to go anyway. And in my mind, when I saw that, I was thinking, I hope that's not in her head. I hope that in the back of her head, because she was just like, okay, I got this. I'm going. Like, you could just tell she was, this is just, again, Chelsea's going to have to come on and give us the whole rundown. But to me, it felt like she was doing it because she wanted to do it, and that the wind was something that was in her head. And then now she was a little bit distracted. And when she got to the spot where she fell, she was already a little bit distracted. She already had a little bit of doubt. And instead of being 100%, she was 95, and something in her brain froze up, and she didn't complete the line. And thankfully she didn't get hurt. But what do you think about that?
I think it actually was more what I said earlier. I think the cameraman, because she was wearing a POV, she had a GoPro or something, whatever the action camera was. Yeah, and they showed the action cam. Her eye got pulled by the photographer the first crash that she had. Her eye got pulled by the photographer. He was still there the second time, and if I was her, I would have politely asked him to move, because he was right at the crux of where she needed to be. It would have not have been a big deal for him to just move out of the way. When you're doing big consequence like this, like, move out of the way, buddy. Like, you know that's her line, then get out of her peripheral. Even if you didn't think it was a problem, get out of the way.
Yeah, but that's the venue. That's what you're signing up for. Like, you can't go to Red Bull Rampage and complain that there's drones and helicopters there.
Oh my gosh, that would be so annoying. I couldn't do it. Yeah, the wind. It's so
annoying. But that's Red Bull Rampage. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to that event, there's photographers, there's drones, there's like you do need to be able to ride past all those things. You need to be able to not have those things as distractions. Unless the guy was actively in her line and she was afraid she was going to run over him, like, she's got to be able to lock in. I just think that's part of the venue. I don't think you go to Red Bull Rampage and tell the camera person or the photographer to move.
You're making a really good point. Although I would say the drones and the helicopters, that's a consistent noise. That's like it's always there, whereas the photographer just comes out of nowhere. You're like, oh, there you are.
Look, I mean, if you're at that level of riding, you're used to drones. Right. You're used to drones. Yeah. When you and I have been at mountain bike parks and we've heard drones, it's scared the crap out of us. Yeah. Like, and it's been really annoying. You're like, oh my gosh, like, it takes your attention. But if you hear it all the time, if you're a pro level rider, you hear it all the time. So, we're going to have to get used to it since we're heading towards pro. We're going to eventually have to get used to drones. I know people are going to, helicopters. I mean, well, we'll be in the helicopters as they take us up to the top of mountains, but also, the drones, people are going to want to see the ride and laugh guys riding from every angle. I mean, they're like, yeah, we've seen enough of you guys. Like, your cameras are fine. Yeah. How many angles do we need to see Dan fall? I don't know. It's a little redundant at this point. But we had a lot of video of us succeeding this year also. So, It's fun. Yep. It's fun. Ride and Laugh 1 at Gmail and the YouTube comments. What do you think about the camera people? Is it their responsibility at Red Bull, or is it the responsibility of the rider? So it's a little bit different when you're that level, when you're pro level, and you're at an event like that with a huge purse. Like, they're there to document, and that's more about what it's about than anything. Yeah. Yeah. So, well. Really, really interesting stuff. Didn't get to our topic, which is great because I love when we just end up riffing about things. I hope everyone enjoyed it. We're not done yet. We didn't talk about your rides. I know we both did solo rides because I'm in Arizona and you're in Pennsylvania. But I do want to hear about your Saturday and Sunday ride if you want to tell us some of the interesting points.
I'm going to make my gratitude my Sunday ride, and there was really nothing on my Saturday ride. Excuse me. My Sunday ride was at Mount Penn, and I got to tell you, I just missed you. I missed you a lot. I did a lot. I got a lot done. It was a big ride, and it was a lot of fun. I did Skyline, the full thing, by myself, but I missed you, man. It wasn't the same doing it without you. Yeah. So not much to say there.
Yeah, I understand, and I certainly miss riding with you as well. That will happen again very soon. Yeah, I got out, and I've been really busy here, but I was able to get out to South Mountain. And as I'm riding out there, I was like, wow, there's a ton of people here. I'd never seen the parking lot so crowded. I mean, in Arizona, when you go from 110 to 102, apparently that's good enough.
Yeah.
I still thought it was crazy hot, but everyone was out, in like pants and sweatshirts. No, I'm kidding. But so as I'm riding out, I decide I'm not going to ride back the same way because that's the main trail and that's where most of the hikers are. And so instead I made a left and I did the Corona de Loma trail. So I rode all the way out.
Hey.
And I got to learn those lines a little bit better. I mean, it is a downhill switchback city. And it's just like rocky and there's so many different lines you could take and it's pretty high consequence if you were to mess it up. So I actually like stopped halfway through and just like let my legs breathe because I had done a big ride already. And it's so rocky and there's so many switchbacks, but it was a fun ride and it was great to get out, and gratitude and support and appreciation for the support of my family that just is like, yeah, go ahead, take 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever you need, and get out on your bike and enjoy. And it fills me up, gets me ready for the rest of the week. So certainly appreciate that. So well, we do want to talk, and we'll say this again at the end of the podcast, which is coming up, but make sure that you go in and rate and review on your favorite podcast player, and make sure that you give us a thumbs up on YouTube.
Yes, please.
And and Ride and Laugh 1 at Gmail if you have any questions or anything you want us to talk about, or any stories you want to tell us, any inspiration that we gave you. We love all that stuff, and we'll probably bring it up on the pod. But whether we do or not, we appreciate everybody that comments and likes and subscribes and reviews, and you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That would be awesome.
You know what, Danny? And also, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone that's shared this podcast. I think for you and I, it's hard to look at the numbers and we're like, oh, why aren't we growing? But like, we really have been growing. And a lot of that has to do with people just talking to each other and actually sharing the podcast. Like, yo, I just heard this podcast. It's awesome. Take a listen. And I just want to say thank you to all those people, the people like Dennis who shouted us out on his channel. Like, it means a lot. It means a lot.
Yeah.
We'll pick up a subscriber or two here and there every time you do that. And it makes a difference. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone that's been doing that.
I agree. I thank you very much. We are growing. We're doing great. This is still a very new podcast. So everyone that tells your friends about it. And we've had so many people talk about us helping them, inspiring them on a feature or inspiring them on a trail. Maybe something that we said about mindset. Maybe it's just the positivity, or people that just like listening because we're being positive. And this is who we really are. This is how Sage and I really talk. We're not faking it for an hour. And
it's true.
I think after 36 or 37 episodes, I think everyone pretty much knows who we are. Like, you can't fake.
You know what you're getting. You know what you're getting. Yep.
Yeah. Like, if you're still listening, you definitely love mountain bikes, and you probably like Sage and I also. Come on, you can admit it. You don't have to pick a favorite. You can like us both the same, but if it's me,
Ride and Laugh 1 Gmail. Yeah. We'll put up a poll.
No, I don't want to do that. I don't want either of us to lose that poll. We're only winners here. Everybody's a winner.
That's right.
Yes. I think that's a great point. And so my point just being that, like, if you share it with someone, like, it could make a difference. I mean, my intention, Sage's intention with this podcast is to put out positivity, share the stoke, help people, laugh and entertain, but also inspire and awaken and realize your unlimited nature. So thank you, everybody. And excellent point, Sage. Let's get into our mountain bike gratitudes of the week. Yes. Sage, I'll let you go first.
Well, my mountain bike gratitude, just to latch on to exactly what you just said about spreading the stoke. I was kind of missing you a lot. And I was like, you know what, let me go to the Phoenixville Bike Park because, I always run into somebody there. And my gratitude actually goes to Lucas, who is Eric's son, who we met a few times there working on the blue intermediate line. And this weekend.
How old is he? How old is Lucas?
What is he? Like, is he 9?
He's 9.
What is he? Yeah, 9.
He's 9.
9 years
Mia's
old.
7. Lucas is 9.
That's right.
And their dad, who's awesome, takes them to bike parks and they love mountain biking. And so
I've been with this journey of watching Lucas get over the intermediate jump, and I've been dying to see him move over to the advanced level jump, which is that jump from the blue to the black is big. I mean, the jumps are literally twice the size. And I watched Lucas. Yes. And I watched Lucas completely clear the advanced line, and I was just
Oh
blown
my
away.
God.
It made my day, and he just picked up my spirits. It was just unbelievable. So gratitude to Lucas. Congratulations to Lucas.
Congrats,
It was
Lucas.
awesome.
You're unlimited, brother.
Yes.
That is awesome. Anything is
Yes.
possible. You got this.
So
Yes.
good. Yeah.
That is amazing. Yes.
And Mia,
Yes.
Mia's gonna clear that blue jump. She's so close.
I mean, Mia, like, there's kids that are 7 that can't ride bikes. There's kids that are 7 that can ride bikes. There's not many 7-year-old little girls that can shred a mountain bike the way that this kid does. She is powerful. She is centered. Her technique is good.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
confident. I mean, at 7 and Lucas at 9, these kids are amazing. So it's only winning here. It's only winning, getting kids out and succeeding and feeling good about themselves and doing something physically also at the same time. It's really cool. So that's an excellent gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what about yourself, Danny?
My mountain bike gratitude of the week is the podcast.
Okay.
The revelations that I've had in our conversations, the comments that we get from our listeners that spur these conversations, the insights and the questions that you and I go back and forth with, and based on a lot of the comments and based on what we think will help people, and really just based on what we love talking about. And for me, this week has been very, very interesting and somewhat difficult with my family life and my work life. And here I get to sit down and talk bikes for an hour with my buddy, or an hour and a half. Sage will edit it down. He'll take out all the annoying parts. As if there's annoying parts. Come on.
Come on.
Yeah, no. And that's how I started the pod, was like, hey, he said, how are you? And I'm saying, I'm okay. I'm going. I'm taking everything that we've learned this summer and everything that we've been talking about on this podcast. And when I go back and I listen to some of these older podcasts, there's nuggets in there. There's really interesting things in there. And there's also growth.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I don't think that way anymore. I don't ride that way anymore. I don't approach things that way anymore.
Yeah.
We started this podcast with you not jumping and you skeptical that it was ever going to happen and you using the wrong language about it. Right. And me kind of coaching you through that. And then it happened. It happened. So it's just like, for me, life now is just going with the flow, and it's just letting go and just seeing what happens and what's the best that can happen. And this podcast is a microcosm of that. And it's the highlight of my week, being able to sit down and talk bikes and joke around with you. And then the listener comments start coming in, and we get to talk about those. And we don't get to the subject we have so many subjects. We don't get to the subject because our comments are so good that we end up talking about that, or Red Bull Rampage comes up and we want to talk about that. So I so much gratitude for the podcast, what it's been for you and me, and what it means for other people, and the feedback that we get, and what it's given me. So, everyone, thank you for listening and for supporting us. So we just really appreciate it.
Man, I love it. And I feel the same way. My mountain bike tip is something that we referenced earlier, and I might have just kind of glanced over it, but we had talked about marking the trail, and oftentimes I'll mark a rock. Another option that you can do is pick something far off in the distance. And I briefly mentioned this, but it's actually a better way to approach it because it gets your eyes up. When you mark a rock, you're forcing yourself to look down, which is something that we typically don't want to do. Now, if you're in a desert situation or there's nothing out in front, like in Arizona, oftentimes you do have to look down. If you are in the woods, try and pick a tree that's off in the distance, and that's where you want to aim. This works great for step downs. It works great for drops. It doesn't work so well with jumps, but in those two instances, a drop and a step down, pick a tree. Instead of looking down and marking, the wood or the rock on the floor, pick a tree off in the distance and aim for that. And that's going to send you in the perfect line. That's my mountain bike tip. Danny, what do you got to add to that?
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think it's a great idea. And I haven't done that as much. You've often said, I'm looking at that tree. That's what I'm doing. And I'll say, I'm looking at the rock. But you're better at staying centered than I am. So there might be something to that. I'm gonna try to do that more. It's look, whatever helps. Right and left one at Gmail and YouTube comments. So do you pick a tree? Do you pick a feature? Do you pick a rock in the distance? Wherever you are riding, are you looking at, what are you looking at in front of you when you're doing a difficult feature? Or does marking the ground really help for you? And marking the ground, that doesn't bother me. I feel like I get my eyes back up. And so I'm going to look at it and then I'm going to get my eyes up. So it does help to lead me in. My trail memory isn't as good as yours. So what I appreciate sometimes is when we mark a rock and then we go and do it 3 weeks later in the flow of the ride, and I don't remember the line exactly, and the rock's still marked.
Yes.
Or if you ride a trail and someone has already marked the line for you, you're like, oh wait, oh that's perfect. Yeah. John's rock has a mark on it that was put there like a year ago. And I love it every time we ride over that big giant rock of Mount Penn. I love it because I'm like, that's the line. If I keep my tire on that line, which that one makes sense because you're looking up, you're not looking down. You're climbing up a big giant rock. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Dual purpose.
Yes. You don't have too many features like that. Mountain biking is amazing.
Yep.
Well, if you're still listening, you are definitely one of us. You love mountain biking. We appreciate you for listening. Gratitude for listening. Like and comment and subscribe and all that good stuff that we already talked about. Have a wonderful week of riding, everybody. Ride and laugh.
I'll see everyone.